So yesterday evening, I posted on my Facebook page an interview just under 2 hours that I did with Vice News, news media out of the United States of America. I hope by now most people would have had a chance. I know it's very long, but would have had a chance to see the entire interview. Now, I took the unusual step of releasing that video, the interview, largely because in the interview itself, I thought that there was a predetermined agenda of the interviewers. And I had suspicions that the interview may be used in a manner out of context, where the elements are just clipped from it and utilized to carry a story that the interviewer wanted to portray about me and about the country. So I thought that if the country saw the entire interview, then they will understand the context of the discussions that we've had. And they themselves would see some of the inherent biases that were portrayed in that interview. So I'm going to speak a bit about the content of the interview. But before I do so, I saw Mr. Norton saying, I saw the story in one of the news media, that if I wish to disprove these allegations, and what allegation was he speaking of? The interviewer asked me, do you take a bribe? And I said no. And then they said that someone told them that they collect money for me. And so that's the allegation. And I said, that's not true too. So they would never, ever find that anyone who can say they've given me a bribe, or any evidence of anyone giving me a bribe directly or indirectly, because I never took a bribe, and that's why I was so confident about it. Now, the mere fact that the question was asked, it's loaded. So on all the airwaves and the stories, Jagdeo denies taking a bribe. So already that brings associate the bribe word with my name. But let me make it very clear, there will be no evidence, there can be no evidence, because it never happened, and that's why I was so confident about it, about saying no when the interviewer asked me that question. And I believe people can ask any questions, although the question was loaded. And I wish maybe the local media will ask all of the politicians in Guyana that question, and then put the same headline next to their name. Granger denies taking a bribe. Harman denies taking a bribe. Norton denies taking a bribe. Ramjatan denies taking a bribe. So I do hope that the media, local media, will put those questions and then post the same headlines that they did in this case. So, but that's moving forward. So Mr. Norton said that to disprove these allegations, I should, one, match my earnings with my assets. Now, I know Mr. Norton, as I said before, has always been a junior functionary of his party and in the government. So I can excuse his unfamiliarity with the law that was passed and that was complied with which is the Integrity Commission Act of Guyana. So since he didn't have to submit, he may be unfamiliar with it. So I will excuse his ignorance of the law and what has been happening. Now let me just say for Mr. Norton's education that in 2000, year when I became president, 1999, from that year onwards up to 2015, the government and government officials, cabinet officials, they submitted every single year their statements of income and assets to the Integrity Commission, precisely so that if the assets far exceed your income, then it would be evident and an investigation could be triggered, and the penalty in the act is a year imprisonment for false declaration or no declaration. Now, what happened in the post-2015 period when his party was in office? For the first 3 years, they did not submit any statement of income and asset to the Integrity Commission. They have not done so. The PBP, as soon as we got back into office, we have been submitting. For the 2 years we have been in office, and for personally, last year I submitted, in fact the year before too, even in opposition, I submitted. Last year I submitted my statements of income and asset for the 2022. So that is precisely what has happened. And it's shameful that Mr. Norton, his party having such a sordid track record. In the 28 years they were in office, nothing of that sort existed. And in the 5 additional years they were in office, 3 of those years, they refused to submit any statement. In fact, disbanded the Secretariat of the Integrity Commission. So when you talk about matching assets with income, that is where it's done. Secondly, in the interview itself, I said that the Granger administration, in the period running up to 2015 elections, they used to say that Jagdeo was corrupt, they would jail him upon assuming office, that I stashed assets all around the world. And so I'm aware that they did investigations. They had our submissions to the Integrity Commission. They knew they had access to the local bank accounts, and they looked at our foreign assets. So when I said they looked at foreign bank accounts, it didn't mean we had foreign bank accounts, but they examined whether we had these accounts. The fact is that I do not have a foreign account. I do not. So when he said I must release my foreign bank accounts, I do not have, and it could be easily verified. I do have 2 accounts, and they are both at the 2 local banks, and all of my source of income will be accounted for at these institutions. So my source of income, my earnings are accounted for, whether it comes from my government pension or income from rental. The contracts are with the bank so that they can see the source of my earning. Similarly to all the assets I've acquired, they have been done through the banking system. Through the banking system. So you can trace every asset that I've acquired back to the banking system. So that is for transparency. He cannot speak with such clarity and surety about his own party. I can forgive him because, as I said before, he was a junior functionary, and he may not have to declare, or he may have used up his asset at a particular alley in this country. But the thing is that I can speak with great clarity, and my assets and income are matching. Now, he said he called on the police, and that's the best way to deal with this matter, that any evidence of corruption, because you have allegations all the time across the political spectrum, but any evidence of corruption, or the police is the best place. That's where it should be investigated. Now, we were subjected to Sahara and Soku upturning our lives. And the worst that they could find for me, remember what they were saying, is that I bought the land from the government at a lower than market price. When I demonstrated that the price I paid at that time for the land was even higher than what the market value for land was when we go out to tender. That was the only thing that they, after scouring everything, and they had the tools, they had state power. So, and they could have checked everything. So I'm really sure that Mr. Norton did not think this issue through, because now he's new, and so he wants to jump in on the matter. Now let's go back. So let's rest Mr. Norton for a moment. And let's go to the interview itself. So clearly from the beginning of the interview, I had to make the point that we're a small country, and if you look at the interview, we do not want to be caught up in a Cold War-like scenario between the United States and China. The last time we were caught up in a Cold War type of atmosphere, it led to the CIA and the British Secret Service intervening, dividing our people, and led to a dictatorship for 28 years in this country because of Cold War politics. And so we believe in having friends everywhere, that we are going to assess relationships on what's good, on the basis of what's good for our people. What's good for our people, that's what we're going to be pursuing. So we don't want to be caught up in that. We have close relationship with the United States of America, and we have the US is the biggest source of investment now in Guyana, but we're not going to be caught up in an anti-Chinese hysteria. I made that clear in the interview. Now, clearly the agenda was evident, and I believe that when these non-mainstream media come to Guyana, particularly like Vice News, the way they get into the media cycle is to say something spectacular. They can't get in and come and talk about all the positive things in Guyana. They will never get into this news cycle. So I believe it's China gets attention in the United States of America. To prove that a government is controlled by China is big news there. Or a corrupt third world country controlled again by China. And I sense that this was the narrative right from the beginning. So it started off with us talking about Taiwan and the decision that was made, you know, to have Taiwan establish an office here that was reversed the next day by the government of Guyana. And I made it clear that this decision was not made at the level of the president and the cabinet, and therefore it was reversed.
And at no point in time could a lower level in government depart from the One China policy, which had been with us since the establishment of diplomatic relations with China. So then the question was, why did you do this? You had to do this for a reason. China had to pressure you. And I said, no, it's clear that there was a departure from our position. So I then said that we are in good company, because about 180 of the 190 odd countries at the United Nations, including the United States and China and Europe, they subscribe to the One China policy too. So clearly that didn't go too well to prove that we were pressured. So the next position was the government of Guyana basically was bribed to reverse the decision by China because we got a $1.5 billion loan immediately after the reversal, if you look at the interview. And I had to say, absolute nonsense, basically. Because at this point in time, since we took office, there is no new loan with China at this point in time. We have contracted no new loan with China at this point in time. So to say that we got a $1.5 billion loan after we reversed that decision and that it was a quid pro quo, it's not true. There is no loan contracted at this point in time. Secondly, I was amazed at the level of ignorance and lack of preparedness when the interviewer started reeling out a lot of projects that are all won by the Chinese. So, one, the Linden-Mabura Railroad, that is not won by the Chinese, although most of the bidders were Chinese. It's won by a Brazilian company. That's about $200 million. Amila, the bridge, and then the schooner Parika Road. And I had a difficult time understanding that this is a Chinese project, because that project, I couldn't even believe she would say that the Chinese won that. We haven't even designed it, completed the design as yet, much less award a contract. And similarly, saying that the extension of the East Coast Highway from Annandale to Mahaika, that's also awarded. It's not true again. So at this point in time, there is no new loan from China. Secondly, where there are two projects that were tendered, the bridge and the Amila Fall, and none of the contracts have been sealed as yet, because we're in the negotiation phase for both of these contracts. None of them. And now we're exploring some hospitals with Austria and with China. So there's 7 new hospitals. Small scale ones with China and a big one with an Austrian firm financed from UK financing. So that is what our position at this point in time, since we assumed office, is with China. Now the bridge, we said before the elections we're going to build a bridge. That's in our manifesto. And we said we'd return to Amila. And we came in and we tendered both. So what also bothered me is that the interviewer then said, I was not aware that some of these projects were tendered. So she thinks that you just pick up the project and hand it to somebody in Guyana. That's the kind of backwater country that we have. We'll pick up a project and say, you go and take this one. We sit down every day and have a lotto. You come to my office and you take which contract you want. So then that brings me to the next point. So clearly, this aggressive anti-Chinese agenda came through. And then the next thing, did you take a bribe? Or do you take a bribe? And I said no. And then she said, well, we heard. And so she read out something that Suranji ostensibly said. And he said something like about very accurate, the guy helps and all of that. And I said, that's accurate. But I help a lot of people, but without any consideration. I see lots of companies, but it's not for money or a bribe. But what bothered me, I didn't pick it up immediately. She asked me about the laws that we're changing to help the contractors. And I said, which law? And she didn't answer. She then went on to say that Sue said we'll change the Constitution of Guyana so that we can give them contracts. I don't know I have the power to change the Constitution of Guyana to give contracts to people, and whether you even need to do that. But that is the level of nonsense that I was subjected to, that we're going to change the Constitution of Guyana to give contracts to people. Now, let me tell you, so I said, I cannot respond to what people told you. Yeah, you could be fabricating this. I don't know whether you made this up or not, or these people told you. But clearly, I've answered the question about whether any of these, any help I've accorded to anyone was done for consideration, and the answer is no, a categorical no. But let me tell you now what my typical day is like, because many people don't understand that. My typical day is tons of work on moving projects forward. If there is any trouble in any project or any ministry or program, not just project, a program, training, whatever, I'll intervene because my agenda, the president made it clear we have to deliver. And as General Secretary of the party, I've made that clear that the key to the 5 years would be delivering on our promises. So I have no qualms about pushing people. I have no qualms about doing that. But does that mean we violate the process or the procurement system? The answer is a categorical no. So do I see people? I see lots of companies, American companies, Canadian companies, Chinese companies, some Chinese, less Chinese companies actually than Western companies. How do they get arranged? They contact my office, some for meetings. Some people ask me to see them. People from the party, people from the opposition call me and say, can you see a company? Any friends may call me, but does it mean that I'm doing this for consideration? The answer is no. I'll see people, a lot of people. I see individuals. I have then people as General Secretary from the party come to see me to resolve a lot of issues. So I meet a lot of people, I work with them. Now, I've had experiences too, where one person that I know of, a female, she was basically telling people that she could gain access to them and collecting, well, not favors from them. And I discovered that, and I stopped seeing anyone that she asked me to, because she is a member of, she was working with us in the opposition. So I don't know what discussion people have, what they tell investors or people if they arrange a meeting. But I know for sure that it's not because people have to pay me. So I'm now putting my head on the block for now, Sue Ranji, what he said to somebody, if he is lobbying them or if it's a lie. He claims this is a lie. He never said anything of the sort. But I'm not putting my head, because if he says that to someone, that's his business. But if I discover that he's doing that, then he will, even if he asks me to see somebody, I'll never see them again. And this is not unique to him, because friend and foe ask me to meet people. Embassies call all the time and they say, some investors are coming in, can you meet with them? And I meet with them. So this is the position here. Now, it's clear that any of these allegations could be investigated or by the police. If the opposition wishes, it could push that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a wild allegation. I'm not paying too much heed to it because it has no substance whatsoever. And I have a long track record. APNU tried to prove me when they had full state power as being corrupt. They scored everything, and they couldn't. And they're not going to be able to do so again because it's not true. So this is where the situation. Other thing that I found reprehensible about the interview was about trying clearly, and this I think was a local interest, that captured them and said we're discriminating against indigenous people in this country. And I had to point out our country's track record versus the track record of many other countries in the world in terms of land titling and subsurface rights and the constitutional guarantees and the Amerindian Act and education access, all of this, because they came in again. So it's either you discriminate against indigenous people, you're in the pocket of the Chinese, or you're corrupt. That's the agenda. And so I was not going to buy into that agenda. And the good thing, because when I do these interviews with some of these foreign groups, particularly, I make sure I keep a copy of it. My staff would take a copy of it so that, because they're very prone to do that, to cut and splice and take you out of context. So the country saw context, they saw me answer clearly. I will stop there. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes.
He's still your tenant?
Yes, yes. From then to now, can't be displaced.
I just want to know.
Yes. And by the way, the tenancy agreement is in the bank. It's in the bank, and it's part of my declaration. It's part of my declaration for 2022. No. Well, if it's proven that he's actually doing this, using my name to make money on the side, then yes, once that could be proven.
You yourself will do an investigation to see if what he's saying is true. How would you be able to?
Well, that is it. How would I be able to do that? If there is somebody who will advise me he says no. So how do I then go? I would like to talk to the people he told this to. But I don't know who, because they didn't say who to whom he said this. It was very vague. To whom, So if you could help with that, that would be ideal for me.
Well, helping with that is one thing. Accessing him is another. We tried calling him with my phone. He put us on to his interpreter, saying
Yeah, but he said he couldn't speak good English. Okay. His grandfather was in Guyana over 100 years ago, you know, so, anyhow. Yes.
All you said here about your government pension
Yeah, sure.
and so on and so on and your rental. But there is a certain segment of John public who says, where did you get all this money to build what they describe as a mansion?
Yeah, sure.
Your property keeps down, and so on. What do you say to them?
Because it's all accounted for in my Integrity Commission statement. Clearly, that is where my assets are matching. So it's clear from there. So and I was there before. I acquired both before APNU came into office. And they had my Integrity Commission statements because this disbanded the Secretariat. I acquired both of those that you mentioned before APNU came into office. So I can't get caught up in this, and I wish you will ask, will you go and ask Granger? I saw they bought 17 acres at Pearl. Now, it's in the official gazette of January 2nd of this year. Did you go and ask Mr. Granger where he got money, or Kevin Granger, his nephew, where they got money to do this? And that is selective. That is very selective. I wish you would do the same thing for everyone else. But my statements are everything that I own is accounted for, and it's matching with my source of earning. And that is where, that is in the Integrity Commission statements, and if you make a false declaration there, you can be sent to jail. So that's my thing. That I work with the system that we put in place. They're the ones who shout the most about anti-corruption, and ask them, you do a survey now and ask for the last 10 years, how many of those MPs on the other side, individually, how many of them submitted in opposition and in government? How many of them submitted? I hope that will be done. Any other question? I'm not Sue's father or anything like that. I'm not his father. And my assets comprise financial assets and properties. Yes, everything. That I do not have any. I had an apartment in New York that I used to use when I left office. I acquired it around 2013 or something because I used to transit. I sold that out. I sold it out because I was not using it for almost 5 years in opposition, and I had to pay for the maintenance. It was too high because when I was traveling frequently, remember the period between 2012 and 2015, I did a lot of international engagements. Earned quite a bit in that period too. So that happened, and that was the asset that I had. And that I disengaged and transferred the money at home because I believe the return in Guyana, investing that money, would yield a greater value for me than keeping it in an apartment that became a liability because I'd stopped traveling. So it was better not to use the hotels but the apartment when I was traveling. I shouldn't have even told you that, but that is the last of the foreign assets that I had. And it's easy to trace. Thank you very much.